time, because whether it's a purring or whatever dogs do that's the equivalent of purring, that they say, people that study that stuff, kind of helps you calm down and everything. I mean, like I said, I don't have a cat right now, but one of the most common things I do is my next door neighbor has a cat, and she's got like one of them little fancy cat things and everything. So as I'm walking by that cat, I think it's a guy cat, he sit there and he's like, he can't even get to me. I think I rubbed him one time the whole time that my neighbor has been over there. But, you know, he's over there, he's reaching out to me like, look, I know you can't rub me, but this is your calming moment, but it's also my calming moment.
You know, I've done a couple of posts, actually, that I got a large response from on people that I did on my website. And one of them really was basically just saying that self-care is not selfish at all. And a lot of people, especially women, I find, because they're holding down a job and the kids and all this stuff, and everybody comes before them, right? And you know, they think that if they take the time for themselves, that they're being selfish. But, you know, when you take the time to refuel yourself, you can give more fully to the other people that are in your life. So it's so important for you to take the time for yourself. If it's a manicure, if it's a 15-minute nap during the day, if it's, like you said, reading a book, if it's a jog, and, like, let's just take it out of, like, the weight realm, right, and just bring it into, like, feeling like a mentally well and whole person. If you don't take time for yourself, you can only run on E for so long until you're just not running at all, right? And I find, too, that, you know, just last Friday, I just on Instagram did a quick thing where I was saying, like, you know, just like you schedule brunch with your girlfriends, or just like you're scheduling all this other stuff on your calendar, schedule an hour for yourself on Saturday, schedule an hour for yourself on Sunday. Because you know what? If you make an appointment with yourself, I know if I make an appointment with anyone, I'm showing up, right? So if you make an appointment with yourself, show up.
Yeah, that's what I think we don't do enough of, is we don't show up with appointments with ourselves. And sometimes I imagine the part of what you do with the yoga is, because I've never practiced yoga, but I know some people that do. There's a major lady here in Durham that's actually a columnist. I want to say she's writing now for the New York Times, but she's actually from here, and she's considered a plus-size woman, and she's been making quite a big name for herself with her yoga, and that's Jasmine Stanley. But I know that she's doing quite well with that and has been quite successful. So I know that she's definitely given some solid advice. But from what I understand of yoga, it's about also having some meditation time. So some of those positions are also about letting yourself internally understand what's going on in your life and everything. Because I think a lot of times we are so much on that go-go kind of attitude that we're not even sitting there time to reflect on what is going on in our lives and with our days and just in general. I think that that's where a lot of times we find relationships going south and things of that nature, because everybody's so busy to some degree being selfish with themselves, but not really giving time to actually analyze what's going on within their lives and everything.
Well, I mean, I personally love yoga because it challenges you, and you know, you're really just focusing on getting through the poses. Like, you know, I do a half vinyasa flow, and you are moving the entire time, so it's a little cardio also, but you really are simply focused. Your focus and your attention is on the mat for that 75 minutes. And then at the very end, when you are in Savasana and you are laying there and you're just like letting it all go. And, you know, you have to lean in to these poses. You have to lean into, sometimes they're painful, sometimes it hurts. And you got to push yourself a little further sometimes, or some days you pull back a little bit, knowing your body and listening to what your body needs that day. But, you know, if you look at and say like, wow, I just did all of that and I was so focused on all of that for that 75 minutes in being in that space, I could take that same focus into my life, and I can make a lot of things change if I apply what I just did for the last 75 minutes into my daily routine. And that's really what I did, or the change for me. You know, I know that, like, I'm just different. Like, that the weight that I have lost, that I have released, that I have let go of, like, I've really let go of. Like, I'm not finding that again, because I've changed who I am. You know, and it's really, like, also I'm a firm believer of you really need to, like, live your life and come at life from a grateful place, from not always looking at what you don't have, but looking at what you do have.
But you're right. I think that too often we find people coming at life from what they don't have and what they strive to have. And I'm not saying that you can't strive to have whatever you want in life, but sometimes I think we get too caught up in trying to compete with the Joneses and what they got, whether they're at the top school or if they're in academics or if their kids are going to the top school or they've got the top car or the top job or whatever. But I think that too often we as a society sit there trying to compare notes to what we think of as success. But a lot of times, some of the happiest people I know are folks that are content with themselves. I mean, one of my best friends, who unfortunately passed away not that long ago, was Barbara Chuck Davis, who started the African American Dance Ensemble here in Durham, but he started actually his dance career when he was up in New York. But he just always had a positive outlook about life in general, and that attitude carried off into everything else that he did. And there's some other folks that even here on this planet now that just seem to have that positive attitude, and that's what seems to encourage them. And you feel a real good presence when you're with them. Because, I mean, one of the things that I find, we've actually talked about it on this show, is the people that can drag you down are those folks that are always shooting that negative energy at you. And we know
absolutely. Absolutely. And, you don't have to allow that or have that negative energy around you. I mean, when you feel that and you know you can choose to let go of it, It's like we have the power over our own thoughts, right? We can choose to live in negative ones, or we can choose to live in positive ones. Someone said to me, and I was almost kind of so taken back that I did write a post about it. At a party, she said, I love what you're doing and everything and whatever, but I mean, come on, are you really always all that happy?
Right.
And I just was I said, I actually am, because if there's one thing I've learned over the last almost 2 years, is that happiness really is a choice. You can choose to get caught up in all the day. I mean, listen, I used to have conversations with myself I could write a script, shoot the movie in my head, rewrite it, reshoot it, you know what I mean? And create all of these things that some of them never even happened, some of them did, or I would just create this world of it just wasn't good. And it's I don't need to live in that space. I am much happier living in the space of gratitude, of feeling well, of being well, of surrounding myself with people who are positive, who understand that there is enough space for everybody to shine. You can do well, and me doing well doesn't take away from you doing well. And I'm here to support you, and vice versa. That quote, "Find your tribe," it's so real,
Oh, yeah, definitely. But when you came out of the corporate world, and you have to go with what company, that's really irrelevant. But when you're in that corporate world, there are sometimes those times that you cannot avoid the naysayers and the negative people. So as someone that has a very positive attitude and is very positive in general, that's one of the things I picked up about you on the Instagram post. How do you cope with those folks that are the naysayers that you cannot avoid? Like I said, there are certain times, yes, you can. There are times you can pick and choose. You can pick and choose your friends, you can pick and choose your spouse, and there's certain things that you can pick and choose. But then there's certain other environments, whether that's school, whether that's corporate or whatever, that you can't pick and choose. And I know that sometimes when I'm talking to friends of mine, that's where they get frustrated in their wellness journey, is that they've got those naysayers that are literally in their backyard and that are always feeding them that negativity. So in your mindset and in talking to them and what you've learned, how do you cope with it when they're in the environment that you can't necessarily get out of?
I mean, listen, all you can do really is I used to be one of those people who would get caught up in what everybody thought about me, or what do I think that person thinks, or whatever. And it's interesting. It's my husband could care less about what anybody thinks about him. And one of the greatest things that I've learned from him is that you can't get caught up in what somebody else thinks about you, or somebody else's drama, or someone else's angst, or any of that. You just have to stay true to who you are and what you know is good for you and what works for you. And as long as you can look at yourself in the mirror and that you can be happy with what you're doing, that's all that really matters, I can't control the person next to me. I can't control how what I say how the person that I say it to is going to react. I can't control what someone's going to say to me. All I can do is control how I respond to it.
But I guess what I'm getting at is it seems to me that in this society that we live in, and I like that attitude that you have and the way that you do it, and even some of the quotes that you shared on your page and everything are very positive and uplifting and everything. But I do know that sometimes, whether it's what 45 is doing or whatever the current issue is in the news, we do sometimes have a tendency to get too caught up in that. Because I know I had a conversation recently where somebody was telling me that they were frustrated about what was going on with the Kavanaugh hearing, and that might have been impacting how they were taking other things that they were seeing in life and everything. So I wonder how, when you're talking to your friends, you tell them that, yes, you might be concerned about what 45 is doing. Like if you've got friends, your mixed race, if you've got friends that are Hispanic that might be concerned about what 45 is doing with their rights or our community, what they're doing with voting rights. But when you're talking to them, how do you let them know that they can be concerned about the issues and be involved in the issues, but at the same time not let them weigh them down? Because I think, particularly in this era, and you just mentioned that at the beginning of this show and everything, and in this era, people are so much letting the outside forces weigh in on them.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I will just admit, I personally, I don't really pay too much attention to all that noise. I feel like there's just a lot that's going on that, like, if I really got caught up in all of that, it would really weigh me down. So I don't. And I, of course I know what's going on in the world, and I pay enough attention, but I don't, like, let myself get completely caught up in the whirlwind of everything that's going on with the government and all that other stuff. When my friends, all I can do is listen, when someone wants to vent about how they feel about someone, share, of course, my thoughts on it. But at the end of the day, it's, like I said before, I mean, we only have a certain amount of control over everything in life, right? And the only person you really can control is yourself.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm really answering your question the way you want me to answer it, but that's kind of all I got.
No, and I'm not trying to dictate how anybody answers any question. I just want you to be real about it, and you're being very real about it. Now, when it comes to your own quotes and everything, you have so many quotes out there on your Instagram. What if you had to, if somebody was to say to pick like 3 or 4 that are your favorites, what are they and why are they your favorites? Like I said, you put out a lot of these quotes. So I think some of them might be things that you found. Some of them might be your original thoughts.
I find a lot of things, and if I knew who wrote them, then I would, give them credit. But a lot of them are not written by anybody that, no one's got a thing on it. And some of the stuff is stuff that I've just thought and written myself. I think a lot of the things that I tend to kind of draw the most, I guess, feeling behind or whatever, are really things that are about kind of being true to yourself and, kind of pushing forward in leaving, footprints of love and kindness to others, being grateful and kind to other people. I posted a quote that said, stay close to those who feel like sunlight, because those are the people who are going to help you be your best you. Right. Right? And doesn't it always feel good to be around the person that is going to, help lift you up and not drag you down? I don't remember all the quotes that I've done, that I've said off the top of my head, but I know I did something about how you're the painter of your own mood. So paint it, boldly and in color or however. It's like a lot of the stuff I really say really is just things that I've learned over the last year in all of the different outlets and the different ways that I have been on my wellness journey. And when I use the word wellness, I'm not just talking about releasing 120 pounds. I'm talking about really healing 3-year-old stuff that I dealt with, really letting go of that so I can be my best self.
And that actually raises an interesting question. Because you said that earlier when we started the show and everything, you mentioned how some of the things that you got in terms of where you started going on certain weight levels and everything was things that happened to you when you were in high school or in school, in grade school.
Well, we all grow up with stuff, right? We all grow up with stuff, and kids are mean.
And that's what I was going to say is kids are mean in general, but we've talked on the show a lot to artists and creative people. We've also talked to entrepreneurs and people like yourself that are inspiring folks of whatever types, and I've talked to activists. But one of the things that when I talk to the artists about is it seems to me, and I was just wondering what your opinion is, it seems to me that just like we got away from the arts in school, it also seems that we got away from, well, to some degree in school. Because I remember when I was in school,